Me and my boy are going to do a little bit of scouting today. Yesterday, here in Alabama, it was like 75 degrees. Had my grandbaby come over, we played. Actually went and did a little fishing yesterday. Beautiful weather. All you needed was a t-shirt. But this is Alabama. So when you live in Alabama, you wake up the next morning to snow. Got quite a bit of little snow covered the ground. You don't see that often in Alabama. So maybe there'll be enough snow to make it easier to locate the beds, possibly see some of the trails. Opportunity to scout in the snow in Alabama doesn't happen very often. We're going to take advantage of it. What's the first thing you do when you scout? I'm going to go to a new piece of property I've never been to before, so I'm going to look at a map. First thing I'm going to do is go to huntstand.com, pop it up. Once I get it opened up, I'm going to look down and find the piece of property that I want to click on, open the map up, and the next thing I've gone in here and done, I did the boundary lines right off the bat so that I'll be able to see where everything is. And then I put on the topo section first, and as I had it on the topo section, I just started marking waypoints, just anywhere and everywhere that looked like a good topographical feature. Did that with the terrain features first. That was my first. And we go to contours. You can kind of see a little bit of the contour lines. You got a big steep hollow right here, and you got potential bed areas. Some of these that I've got in the red or what I don't really have them color coded. Basically, the blue is going to be a ridge line that we want to walk out. This is probably a potential bed area right here, and then these little saddles here and here, and maybe a long drainage here for travel corridor, potential rut area. Deer like to, you got all these high ridges all the way around, and deer like to drop off into this bottom and drainage and chase each other during the rut. So I'm just kind of visualizing what the property looks like before I go put boots on the ground. When you get into the topographical features of it, you can actually see a little bit more of the areas that I may have marked. Really hard to explain on a topo map, but I'm looking for these little gaps right here that create a drainage. These little points right here, possible bed areas. This little flat area right in here around these tops of the ridges. You can almost see a saddle, right? Bends in here and bends in there, right around the edges of all this thick stuff. Could be a potential saddle right there. That could be some benefit. This high ridge line with contour lines come real close together. That's my blue line right there. We'll probably walk it, and there may be quite a bit of bedding on these high ridge where the topo lines get what they call military crest. You got one on this side too, but see the topo lines come really close together. This property down here is billy goat country, so when I'm looking at these little gaps here, I'm looking at places that these deer will come up, make it a little bit easier walking, coming out of this deep bottom, coming up onto these high ridges for bedding. Up in here, I'm basically looking, I know all this up in here is real trashy and clear cut, so I'm looking for areas that these deer might be traveling out of this big long drainage, coming over, maybe crossing over into these beddings on the off property side. So I'm just really trying to understand it on the topo before I put boots on the ground. Well, I'm headed out there to meet my son, do a little bit of deer scouting on this Alabama snowy day. Two big nannies. Well, they had enough. You can see I'm walking a pretty beat down trail right here this late in the year. He's behind me, gonna walk out to the end of that ridge. We just jumped a deer It was a doe. She come up here to see what we were walking around. She's down there snorting. He's gonna see if he can find her bed, which I figure she's bedding on the end of this ridge. It drops off really steep on the left and right down into a huge hardwood drainage. These deer like to come out of them hardwood drainages and work up here on these little finger ridges and bed down. Right here in front of me, I don't know if you can see that big old tree or not, but there's a huge oak tree right here. A lot of old activity on that oak tree, and just right up here we waypointed this tree up here. There's an overcut acorn tree just right there, and then right here in front of us is a white oak tree. It's kind of got a bend and an arch to it. It's kind of weird shape. Anyway, these trails, they split right here. One goes up the hill and one goes down the hill, and you got this old arched over white oak tree with two sprouts going up, and underneath the ground, everywhere you look, the ground's just covered up, scratched. Deer obviously been in here feeding under this white oak tree early season, and the turkeys has obviously come here, scratched it up a little later in the year, hunting for whatever acres were left over. So we waypointed this spot. It's really easy access to get to it, and it's plenty thick enough for deer activity. Good spot. One other thing he's got on this same ridge, which I imagine every one of these ridges and hollows, you're liable to find it anywhere, but there's a lot of hogs in this area. Anywhere you got hogs and rooting activity like this right here, ground's just kicked up, and you see how they just plowed underneath looking for whatever they can find. Grubs, worms, mushrooms, any acorns, just anything. I mean, a hog, I reckon, will eat anything. So I like this little ridge. The other two ridges, that ridge over there drops off almost into a cliff, real steep, and that ridge over there on the other side, which you can't see, it does the same thing, drops off almost to a cliff. This particular ridge here is a long, slender, sloping ridge dropping off into this bottom. Not as much of a terrain break as the other ridge. Makes for easier up and down travel. That's another little plus this ridge has got. Probably why you got so much deer and hog activity on this ridge.
Get up here on the hills where it's comfortable and relaxing. Bucks get smaller.
That's because they can't walk through all this mess and them big antlers. They get hung up. Them bucks I hunt, they gotta have the trees at least 4 foot apart from each other, you know, so they can walk through there without getting their antlers hung up.
I'm gonna walk this road for a little bit.
That billy goat country down there, that explains even more why these deer are traveling up and down this ridge and not the other sides. They're big old fat bucks. They're like me, they're lazy.
I'll sit there next year though.
They ain't gonna climb up and down them bluffs if they don't have to.
Right where that tree is, you got the deer that are coming from that side, any deer walking down this bluff, and any deer using this logging road are coming from this side, they're gonna meander to that direction. Even if they don't get within bow range, you'll see or hear them, and most of them will be within bow range.
If you get right down there where those two trails split between the white oak and the overcup,
yeah,
those trails all split right there. You get right in that little circle, you're probably gonna kill a deer right there, probably a buck.
He'll run down into that thing,
And they're gonna run in that bottom, that bluff. You're gonna need a Chinook helicopter to get them out. That's okay. You gotta kill him first. You guys watching this video, y'all might be wondering why he's carrying a rifle with him. There's a lot of hogs in this area. We have a no close season on hogs, so if we see a hog, we're gonna shoot at it. Put it on the ground. I bring this camera with me and I always forget to put all that on film, but right behind us we got a rub line trail with a good scrape line on it too. And with a south-southeast or east wind, we were just talking about how the bucks would come around the head of this hollow up here with a south wind, and they could smell all of those down there in that draw without ever seeing them. And they could circle around on this with a southeast wind and check all the doe activity out over there around them acorn trees and the bed area without ever having to actually see the does themselves. Bucks don't use their eyes and ears to look for does. They use their nose. So if you start hunting bucks during the rut and want to try to figure out how these bucks travel around searching for these does, you got to start thinking about the nose, because that's how they find them, locate them, and then once they get in there where they can smell them, then they start using their eyes and ears to pin them down and start chasing. Good tip. This little spot right here.
Some years, if they're both dropping, this be a good little spot.
Yeah, early season they'd be hammering this spot right here. It's a little swag. You'll have a wind draft coming out of that deep hollow right here. It'd be easy access to this too. You got a white oak, you got a water oak, and
Right off the back of this pad.
another water oak. And right down there at the end's a red oak. So you got a red oak, 2 water oaks, and a white oak. If you set in that water oak there, you might get a bow shot at every one of these. Or on the high side around that sweet gum tree, shoot down. This is kind of an open, good bow shot.
I would sit
right here.
The south wind's gonna push it back towards the pad.
I like that sweet gum right there. You could put a stand in that sweet gum right there.
Yep.
And get a shot at everything down here on this. You can kind of see how they had the ground tore up too early season. You can still see remnants of it. Scratching going on. Leaves all churned up. Not as easy to see this time of the year, but you can still kind of see where the deer had the leaves punched. Just got to look a little bit harder. You got this green evergreen tree, whatever this kind of tree is. You can barely even tell that that's a deer bed right there. The only thing that really caught my attention is the little bit of brush and stuff right here behind it, and the way it sets up to be able to see that ridge over there. A buck would potentially bed right here if he was monitoring does coming around that ridge over there, and there's actually a pinch point me and my son were just talking about right in the head of this deep little hollow over here. And I looked at this bed. I don't know if you can tell that or not, but there's some deer hair in that old bed right there. So probably need to waypoint this. Probably a buck bed. Okay, you want to waypoint this in? It's a potential buck bed. Where I would say this is a buck bed where he's monitoring these does. I would say that. Can you see any hair in any of these indentions?
No.
There's really not any more indentions. There's one over there and there was no hair in it.
I looked at it. I didn't see any. And it could be. It's an old bed. It's hard to tell.
Well, it's a big bed. You can kind of tell it's a big bed. And it is an old bed, probably from back pre-rut. So how in the world can you find these things? I don't know. It's instinct, gut feeling, terrain. You just, I don't know, over the years you do this long enough, you just start getting a feel for it. I got to get this on camera right here. Before I left the house, I waypointed some spots of interest that I thought might be good. My blue dot is sitting on top of the blue dot I marked. That's where we're standing. See if I can get this thing. There we go. Had to zoom in a little bit closer. So anyway, I almost found this. You can see I almost found this spot on the map before I got here. I just had to explain to my son about this balloon here. There's a ongoing joke on the huntingbeast.com about balloons. Anytime you find a balloon in the woods, there's a good buck bed area close by, and we are 50 yards from where that buck bed was to this balloon. So Dan Infalt, if you're watching this, dude, you're on to something. I'm fixing to go get a truckload of balloons, start scouting. Would you call that rhododendron? Wild rhododendron? Is that the name of that stuff right there? It could be a bed. It's kind of flattened out.
Here, well,
Are you finding hair in them? You looking real close?
I didn't look. That one's obviously a bed.
Yeah, let's look and see if there's hair in it. Make sure. You can kind of see a trail coming right through this. Matthew doesn't seem to think these are wild rhododendrons, but I'm not really good at identifying plants. You can see a trail going right down through the middle of all this, and one coming right through here to get it beat down. So these little edges, and there's a deer bed 20 yards above this. Could be another potential spot for a buck to be monitoring deer coming around these edges. Hey son, come look at this trail down here.
What?
It's a beat down little trail coming right around the edge of this.
I'm on the upper side. I think cut in the draw and they come back up.
Oh, they're cutting right around the edge of this right through. I got some clumped up deer droppings down here. Could be potential buck. They're a lot bigger droppings. Since they're coming from down the side of this ridge and across this drainage right here.
I told you they crossed the road. You know, that big doe bed area is on the other side of the road from here.
Yeah. Well, them big old clumps droppings back there make me think it might be a buck walking this trail here.
A lot of things walking this trail.
You could come in where we got the truck parked. You could come down this steep drainage right here for access.
Yeah.
And instead of getting right on top of that little hump, you could get right on the edge of this. If the wind's coming up this draw, it's going to suck all your scent straight up that direction. And you can shoot them right when they get in this little, as they coming around the edges from both sides, you could get a shot at them. I'm looking at that pine tree right there, a good straight pine. You could get a climber in it right there real easy.
Go out on this side, shade side.
Yeah, what do you think? Is that not an easy pinch point? You got two good beat down, dug into the dirt trails coming to this one spot. Now you can go up there about 50 yards, it could be another trail, but I would bet money that this is the hot trail. These deer got four-wheel drive, it don't bother them to go up and down these humps and hills and edges like that. Like an old man like me gonna bust my tail going up and down through here. Okay, what we got right here is a pinch point. It's almost like a bluff gap, but these deer are not coming up and down this bluff gap. What they're doing is walking, they're running the edge of this long ridge and they're coming around the upper end of this gap right here, because this is just the way they're going to travel from one destination area to another destination area, and in between but doe beddings. And you got a pinch point here right on the upper side of all this mountain laurel, which we were trying to debate whether it was mountain laurel or wild rhododendrons. We think it's probably mountain laurel after looking at it closer. So good little pinch point right here, big droppings in it. There's a rub line up there. There's that bed on the other side. You could probably sneak down this real steep little drainage coming off that ridge and get in the corner of this. Possibly be close enough to if that buck was bedded in that bed, you could possibly call to him and make him come around here and look for you in this little bowl. I like it. Think I could kill a buck here. This is almost getting crazy. This blue dot standing right here next to this yellow marker is another spot I mapped out from the house. That's a potential pinch. And I was not wrong. This is a major potential pinch right here. I'm standing at the tree right now that he probably needs to set up for a bow stand. So you got a bunch of doe beds there?
Yeah, it's old, but I found deer hair in them. There's deer droppings all in around this little hump, flat spot. You can see there's a bed
So
right there.
Right dead on top of this hump. You got deer hair? Shine. I guess I can see it.
Proof in the pudding.
Deer bed there. Got some little round spots.
I got the hair out of that one.
There's 1, 2, 3.
But you can see the doe dropping
4.
on the ground too. There.
5's a big deer bed there. 5. Good 9 alive.
There's a lot of does on
There's
this
10 or
property.
12 deer beds up here on this hump. Right behind this pine thicket,
Gas pipe.
right above that pinch point. This changes things a little bit as far as a hunting strategy goes.
Mark this knob as a bed.
Yeah, you definitely need to waypoint this as doe bedding. On the other side of the mountain laurel, you can still sneak into that spot if you're real quiet. You got the wind in your favor.
You talking about?
On that ridge on the other side, you can still definitely get.
Yeah, I'd have to go.
What you're not going to be able to do, you're not going to be able to come down this far with your vehicle. You're going to have to walk.
That anyway.
Yeah, you're going to have to walk a lot further to get down here. These deer bed here for a reason. Probably because people park up there and they monitoring close to that parking spot, less than 100 yards from where people like to park. So this doe bed area is right dead on top of a high little hump. You got a sharp, steep drainage on one side and more of a sloping, steep little drainage on the other side. You got these thick pines behind you, and probably 100 yards or so up that hill you got a gas well paddle. People like to drive down and park their trucks on it, and then they walk over to a green field that's not too far from here. And these deer obviously bedding right here, monitoring that gas well path where people like to park, kind of keeping tabs on us humans because they're smart like that. And when they get up, they're obviously dropping right off down that little drainage pinch point right there, all the trails. When they get up, they ain't got far, and they're gonna pinch right around that mountain laurel, and they're heading right straight over to them water oaks and white oaks and whatever they got to feed on. That long ridge over there, a lot of activity over there. Your bucks is gonna cruise the bottom edge of this doe bed area. You still finding
Yeah, there's deer droppings and beds everywhere.
deer hair and deer droppings? And how many deer beds you figures here?
I've seen at least 15.
15.
I mean, it's the same group
That's
of
a
does,
pretty-
just bed at different spots.
Yeah, but they got this hillside covered up.
But this makes sense because when I sit in that field, there's the does that cross from the big doe bedding area over there, across the road. But there's always a few, not always, a lot of times there's a couple of does that come up from this hill. They're coming from this bedding area. Those does are coming from this bedding area. Those does come from that bedding area. That other pad, there's another doe bedding area down there because sometimes they come up from that pad. I've seen as many as 12 deer at any given time in that field. There's a big herd of does that live right here in this area.
So what you gotta do is waypoint this little doe bed area, waypoint them other doe bed areas, and try to figure out how them bucks travel from doe bed area to doe bed area and the pinch points in between. That one spot back there where the water oaks are, and you saw that straight line, rub line coming around the corner of it. Now we were saying that you could be good for a south wind, assuming that the does were feeding down there off the end of that ridge, but now this changes things knowing that this bed area is here. Your wind direction is going to be right the opposite from what we were thinking because the does are bedding on this side. So now you got to change your wind direction for when you hunt that area over there.
Yeah.
Makes sense? So you'd be looking at about a north-northeast wind probably to hunt that over there.
Once I get all my waypoints in, I'll come back through it.
You just got to sit down and study it. Get it all on your map and then sit down and study everything, how the bucks will travel using their nose, travel from one doe bed area to the other searching for does in heat. I like this spot.